Breaking news, in-depth coverage, unparalleled access to professional athletes.
Edge of Sports on the PPI Network.
With your host, Dave Zirin.
Edge of Sports Radio returns. Here's Dave Zirin.
I never had to steal ends, because that's foul. I walk the streets, want the radio. I messed it up. Boom, we're back here on Edge of Sports Radio. Our next guest is the former co-host of the Scores Sports Network's Court Surfing, and he is part of the sports and social commentary and media content collective known as All Balls Don't Bounce, must-listen-to podcast. They present the most provocative, socially conscious sports commentary in these North Americas. His name is Will Strickland. Will, how you doing, sir?
What's going on, Dave? It's trying to catch your lyric game.
Man,
and,
it's caught me off guard.
To laugh.
You guys, look, you make me think. I mean, it's an association in my head. Dell and eye examination, Will Strickland. I imagine you in the lab like some evil, mad hip-hop scientist brewing potions.
Well, we're always in the lab because we try to chef that good work up and put it out in the streets, the cyber streets, that is, with All Balls Don't Bounce. You've been one of our people out there, Bodie Broadus. You've been doing your thing for Barksdale and the crew.
Yes, most certainly, and we appreciate that reference here. I'm in the house here with my man, Coach McNutt. Coach, how you doing, sir?
Hey, let's roll.
Let's roll. So, Will, you know the NBA, and so I want to ask you this question as a longtime observer. Before we talk about the deal, before we talk about amnesty, before we talk about who might go where, before we talk about if Chris Paul is really a linchpin for a championship team, my question for you is, what would have happened to the league if the season just hadn't been played this year?
I don't know that the average fan would have missed it at all. I think that baseball really took advantage with their really relatively quiet CBA negotiations, which we kind of discussed on our podcast. And even though they'll never overtake football, it is a strong possibility with no NBA that baseball can come in as a strong second and really start to regain casual fans who are missed at what's going on with basketball. I mean, it's a possibility, but I don't know how many people would miss it. I know I would miss it dramatically. And
I would miss it tremendously. Are we just in our own bubble? Are we in our own little NBA bubble?
There's a strong crew of NBA Nation people who would definitely miss it. I mean, you're going to see some guys who are coming into their primes of their careers and also guys who are in the twilights of their careers. Imagine Kobe Bryant or Kevin Garnett or Paul Pierce or someone like that, even a Dirk Nowitzki losing an entire year of NBA play, with this lockout. Or imagine LeBron James. I'm thinking Dan Gilbert was like, let's keep the lockout going.
Yeah. I was thinking that too. Because all those guys at Miami, a lot of people don't know, they have outs of their contracts after 4 years. So if there hadn't have been a season this year, you could say legitimately, wow, the LeBron, Wade, Bosh experiment is already half over.
No, only because if there's no NBA season, those contracts aren't valid. So, and this is a similar question where I was thinking about the free agent class of 2012, if there's no 2011-2012 season, do those seasons count toward Chris Paul and Dwight Howard? Do they lose those seasons? Like, if they never played them, they're not honoring their contracts.
Wow.
They're still owed another year or so, whatever it is, on their contracts.
My understanding,
so they go to being free agents the next year, right?
My understanding is that it's the worst of both worlds, or the best if you're Chris Paul and you want to get the hell out of New Orleans, in that you don't get the money and the contract is done.
Right.
That's my understanding. So you lose the year and you lose the year on the contract.
Well, you don't actually lose the year on the contract, I don't think. I think you're still I guess if there's no NBA in there, I don't know. If they're still subject to those contracts and they don't decertify and none of that happens, they come back, those contracts still hold. They go back to their original
decertification
team.
throws another Another, God, I'm so tired of talking about this stuff.
There's a lot going on.
So glad to be beyond this. But, hey, Coach, you have a question. What's going on?
Yeah, before we move on from the contract, who won, Will, public perception-wise, as well as the contract itself? Who won?
Well, ultimately the fans win.
Okay.
Because basketball is back. Based on the sheer numbers of it, it's clear that the owners won. I mean, it's funny if these guys had really been thinking, if Billy Hunter and Derek Fisher and those guys had really been thinking about how they wanted to approach this, even though it's a different dynamic, they had to look at how the NFL approached their decertification and their lockout. If you think of the faces of the litigants who, and I mean, this comes into play whether people want to believe this or not, but the faces of the litigants against the NFL weren't, they weren't Adrian Peterson and Michael Vick. They were Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees.
Mm-hmm.
That was just a coincidence.
Yeah, it's just a coincidence. You know better, Dave. And I'm thinking that if you're going to go decertify, it's a different situation only because when you take it to litigation and the possibility that the owners could lose more than $6 billion to these players in litigation, if they were thinking that way, they do that by July 31st, they're already saying we're decertifying. I guarantee you the lockout doesn't go as long. But I digress. The winners here obviously were the owners. The players just wanted to play. I mean, and I think people from a public perception standpoint need to bear in mind that this wasn't a strike by the players.
Right.
They were locked out by the owners.
Right.
Yeah, you can't say that enough so people really understand
Did Stern,
what's going on.
Did Stern take a hit with his ultimatum, take him or leave it, and then all of a sudden, they said they called his bluff, and then all of a sudden he's back up. You know what I mean? Did he take a hit as the most powerful commissioner in sports?
Come on, Coach. And Dave, you can speak to this as well. And I talked about this on our podcast. Like, look, if you're in a relationship, how well do ultimatums actually work?
Mm-hmm.
Not so
Like,
good.
really. It rarely ever work in any sort of relationship, male, female, business, whatever the case might be. So did he take some body blows? Absolutely. But in solving this deal, even though it's about as strong as a gang truce right now.
I like that.
It's strong as a gang truce. Let's talk about that for a second, because everybody's talking about this like this deal is done. But there's a lot of issues they still have to figure out. Could this, though, implode, or do you think, even though there might be a lot of controversy and a lot of griping, we're good to go at this point?
Yeah, we're good to go, and that was the whole purpose, and that was part of the spin. That ultimately, despite what people feel about Billy Hunter and David Stern, and the body blows that they did take, and I guess that's why he's still the champ. He's here, and they found peace through whatever means they needed to find peace, no matter how tenuous that peace might be. As I referred to it as being as strong as a gang truce, but.
If you're going to go after the king, you best not miss.
No doubt.
That's another wire line for you right there.
Shout out to Omar Little.
Oh. Former guest on this show.
Absolutely. I think that once these nuances get worked out, no matter what the griping is going to be, I think these guys are just happy to be back playing basketball, and they'll take the hit on that. Again, these things are always negotiable. The players can end up striking if they wanted to, if they didn't feel like they were going to get what they actually are promised in the bigger pieces of this deal. But there are some smaller parts of the deal, including the age limitation situation.
Where are we going with that? Where are we going with that? I'm a big college basketball fan. Where are we going with that?
Oh, we just turned into the what do we call it now? The NFLAA. It's going to be the same as the NBAAA because now it's truly in collusion with them and the television networks. Everybody's got to get their piece and whore these kids off for more than 1 year. They can't go and make a living in the NBA. No. They can't do that at 18 or 19. That somehow destroys the college basketball system. I don't think it does. But, everybody's got to make their money except for these kids.
Yeah. No, that's very true, and that's what I think. So let's try to talk about something fun before you go, because I love basketball so much, and I've just been having a series of unfun discussions about it for way, way too long. Chris Paul. Does the team that gets Chris Paul, the news are out today that Boston would trade Rondo and some other parts for him. There's news out that the Clippers might want to package Eric Gordon and some other parts for Chris Paul. And then, of course, the Knicks, the team that Chris Paul apparently favors going to, although I don't know what asset the Knicks could actually even bring to the table. Does the team that gets Chris Paul, are they automatically a favorite to make the NBA championship game?
No, but they're a strong contender, and I would ask first, what is New Orleans' ability to even trade a Chris Paul since the NBA owns that team now? Is it a conflict of interest? Is it a gross dereliction of the code of ethics here that the NBA negotiates on behalf of this one team? And
man, they have antitrust protection. Ethics are what you wipe your ass with if you're an NBA owner. Ethics are what you can get caught and prosecuted for doing in the world of big business. And the NBA, like NFL, like MLB, that's the wild, wild west.
Well, I had to throw it out there, but and putting that aside and getting to the fun part, does it make any team that gets Chris Paul an automatic championship team? No. I think it makes them a serious contender. Chris Paul's a great player. I mean, he put a scare into L.A. last year. Not that L.A. was as great as they thought they were.
Yeah, that was part of it, is that they were exposed in the next round. But let's go through it one by one, though. First of all, you're Danny Ainge. Rondo for Paul, in addition to a couple of pieces with Rondo. Do you do that?
I don't see – there has to be a third team involved in that, and I think it's short-term thinking. I know that Danny's looking at, okay, maybe I get Chris Paul for 1 year and I make it a championship, but you made it with Rondo and then proving in younger Rondo a couple of years ago, and it's not like he's regressing. I just don't know if there's something going on between Danny and Rondo, why he's always putting him on the market.
Absolutely.
I think you go from Rondo and Kendrick Perkins to Chris Paul and Jeff Green. I don't see why you do that.
I don't either. But again, Chris Paul won't stay there if they do a deal just to trade him straight up for his contract as is and allows him to go free agent. I don't see him doing a sign and trade to go to Boston for 4 or 5 years. I can't see that happening because Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and Kevin Garnett won't be there forever. So I don't see him staying there. It's not a good strategy for Chris personally. But it works out for Danny Ainge and for Boston if he goes for a year. Absolutely.
Okay.
There just has to be another team that's involved. And like you said, whether it be the Clippers, which I don't think their pieces are as attractive to either team. I think the Knicks have to get involved. They have no real assets.
Yeah, I mean, what would the Knicks' asset even be to get into this trade?
Does Chauncey Billups end up going back to where he started?
Chauncey Billups? He's 97 years old. What are we talking about?
Chauncey Billups, the prize of the '83 NBA draft.
Right. Well, we have to look at numbers.
Him and Ralph Sampson.
We have to look at numbers, and we have to look at what makes sense for Boston. Because for this trade to happen. You know, if Chris Paul goes to New York, there's going to have to be another team that's involved. There's not going to be a straight-up trade between Boston and New Orleans. There's definitely got to be a third team, and I don't know what New York gives up to get anything except a bunch of draft picks. Yeah, and I don't see that situation working there either. I mean, you can play great offense all day, Mike D'Antoni. Ask Paul Westhead how many championships he won doing that.
Oops.
Yeah, he won one. You take that. But, but Magic got him fired right after that.
But I'm saying Westhead didn't run the same kind of offense in L.A. When you got Kareem down there, and all right, you go showtime for the first 3 quarters, and in the fourth quarter, it's Cap posted up on that box at Magic, faking high and going low, or faking low and going high, and Cap, it's coming, skyhook, game done.
Do you know? I got to tell you though, I don't think Chauncey Billups has been the same since he left the Fort Wayne Pistons. I mean, Fort Wayne has just been a shell of a team since he was there.
That's true. And I miss that backcourt is a dynamic backcourt with Chauncey and George Yardley back there.
Oh, very nice. I told you, this guy knows his stuff.
I can see you guys going way back. I understand.
Big time. He gets in the way back machine.
We go way back like I tell him all the time. With the NBA, I go back like fat crayons and car seats. We do it well.
Nice. was going to say, you go back like peach baskets.
Right.
Let me
yeah,
throw.
You tried to get me last.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
That was good.
Thank you. Let me add, Will, before you go, though, you were in Spurs training camp with someone who just got in the Hall of Fame, Dennis Rodman.
Yeah.
And so I did want to ask you this before we go. Dennis Rodman, 2010-11 inductee into the Basketball Hall of Fame. First ballot, which surprised a lot of people. I believe he averaged 6.5 points a game for his career. Question for you, Will, as someone who's around Dennis Rodman. 1, did he deserve to be a first ballot Hall of Famer? And 2, what do you think about Dennis Rodman as a player? What was it like to be around him on a week-in, week-out basis? What was it like?
It wasn't that many weeks because I barely made it.
Hour in, hour out basis.
Right, yeah, minute by minute. But I'll tell you this, absolutely, yes. He is, for his size, outside of Bill Russell, the greatest rebounder who ever played the game. Some might argue that Wes Unseld's in there, but Wes Unseld was not even a quarter of as athletic as Dennis Rodman and dynamic to be able to guard 5 positions on the basketball court at 6'8", 210, 215 pounds. And he did everything that you needed a guy to do. He was a scorer when he was in college. He came to the pros. He learned he knew what his role was going to be on that Pistons team, and he played that role to the utmost.
Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. The worm.
Did you say the second? What did you say? The greatest rebounder?
The second greatest rebounder.
The second greatest rebounder behind Bill Russell at that size of all
relative
time.
to size.
Now, are you basing that what on longevity, his rebounding average, the championships he's won? And Paul Silas comes to mind instantly.
Paul Silas comes to mind, but Paul Silas was not as dynamic as Dennis Rodman, not even close. From a defensive and rebounding standpoint, and I love Paul Silas, I don't see the comparison whatsoever. I think that just because Dennis, if I ever saw Paul Silas go out and guard JoJo White or Ricky Sobers or somebody like that on a perimeter on a night-to-night basis, or even ask him to go out and guard Dr. J or George Gervin.
You said rebounding. You're not talking about defense. You said rebounding.
The reason I felt like he was a first ballot Hall of Famer because, one, he was the second greatest rebounder in NBA history at his size behind Bill Russell, William Felton Russell.
I think it's a defensible argument, Coach.
And he was so dynamic defensively.
It's also defensible when you think about some of the averages he put up, 18.7, 18.3, 14.9, in the context of an era where people were winning rebounding titles by averaging just 11.5 a game. Like the relative leap from what he was doing compared to other people, to me, is very impressive. But let me tell you something. When it's all said and done, Kenneth Faried will be described as the greatest rebounder.
Oh, my God.
I like his game.
Thank you.
High energy cat.
Yep. Thank you. Yep. Remember I said it. Hey, Will Strickland, you are the man. All balls may not bounce, but unfortunately, we got to bounce right now. You're the man, Will. We'll talk to you soon. Where can people find more about All Balls Don't Bounce before you go?
They can find us online at allballsdon'tbounce.com. You can check us at Facebook at All Balls Don't Bounce. We tweet ABDB Media. Check us there, and the podcast is going down this week, so check us out. All Balls Don't Bounce.
They're very good at what they do.
Excellent.
Will Strickland, thanks so much for joining us on Edge of Sports Radio.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks, Coach. Thanks, Dave.
Peace. Yo, that was very interesting stuff because let me tell you something. I think Will is absolutely right that anybody who thinks that this contract is done isn't paying attention right now. Anybody who thinks that the NBA is about to sail smoothly towards a season right now hasn't been paying attention. I think there are a lot of players who are angry about certain things. And things just we find out new things every day. I read yesterday about how this amnesty clause that allows teams to jettison players with bad contracts. Right. Do you know that only teams who are under the salary cap are allowed to sign those players?
I did not know.
At that point, yeah. You're not allowed to accrue a luxury tax if you're like say a Dallas Mavericks or a team that's willing to spend. You can't take advantage of other people's amnesty unless you're a team that's under the cap. This is going to be something that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. And if Stern makes a mistake and gets greedy and says, we now want 2 years before you can come into the league, something like that, I mean, you could have a ripple effect that could damage the start of this year.
So, okay, 1 to 10, 10 being we are definitely going to play basketball on Christmas Day. Where are you?
I'm a 9.
Okay.
I'm a 9, but that means I'm not a 10.
Right.
And most people are a 10 right now.
Right. Hey, Wes Unseld.
Wes Unseld is a very good choice, rebounder relative to size.
I mean, 6'8".
Yeah, absolutely. No, Wes is in the discussion. Rodman is definitely in the discussion. I mean, it's especially interesting with Rodman when you think about the fact that he did have to guard, oftentimes two guards, but still grabbing those rebounds.
Right.
That's my point.
Okay.
But still grabbing those rebounds.
But we said, the Will's comment was rebounding, and he didn't say
relative
defense.
to size is what he said.
Right, rebounding relative to size. Then he got into, and you are now getting into defensive skills and chasing guys on the perimeter. I was just dealing with the concept of rebounding the basketball.
I don't know, me personally.
You never got a rebound anyway.
Oh,
so why are we gonna
please, starting center. I got rebounds for days. I collected rebounds like chipmunks collected chestnuts.
A free throw that bounces on the floor and you garner it is not a rebound in my book.
Look, I'm not saying, I could barely jump on a magazine, and I acknowledge that. I couldn't jump over my own shadow. But let me tell you something. I used this butt, knocked him back, the occasional elbow to the chops, and then my one-handed Buck Williams style, I got him. You know I had Buck Williams. Not only did I have Buck Williams poster on my wall, I had Isaiah Thomas's poster only because it's an action shot of him going up on Buck Williams. That's how much I was down with my rebounding. Don't talk about my rebounding.
New Yorkers can't shoot anyway, so that's why you got a lot of rebounds. Not because you could rebound. There was lots of opportunities
Lots of opportunities relative to rebounds. That I will agree with. But I'll tell you this, something I wish I'd said to Will right now. If you talk about greatest rebounders per size, how about a gentleman who is just about 6'4 3/4, who once had almost 15 a game one year, Charles Barkley.
Oh, wow.
Relative to size. If we're really talking relative to size, if you're 6'4 3/4 and you're doing that, you're in the discussion.
Yes, sir.
Hey, this has been an important show. I'm so glad to be back right now. Hey, anybody listening to the show who's in San Francisco, come out tonight to Mission High School and see John Carlos and me do it up out there in the Mission District. For Coach McNutt, for Jeremiah Tittle, you can follow me at Edge of Sports. And for everybody at the PPI Network, we are out of here. Peace!
This is
Edge of Sports on the PPI Network.
with your host, Dave Zirin.